So, okay. Nope, we're not. And now we are live. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of Homegrown Stories. And this is my little way of trying to show the world why I am so in love with North Dakota. And I am a little bit, or North Dakotans too. That's why I'm in love with North Dakota, plus the land. But I'm a little biased on today's story, but it's a pretty amazing story and it's pretty unique because you won't get to meet and talk with too many fifth generation farmers. So he's also my running mate for Lieutenant Governor of North Dakota. So today I am pleased and excited to introduce Mr. North Dakota himself, Ben Vig. Ben, welcome.
Hi, Shelley. Good evening.
Hey, so we're just going to start out a little bit with, tell us about yourself. You are a millennial and etc. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm fifth generation family farmer here on the what is now the family homestead, and been married for 4 years now with my wife Megan, and have a 3-year-old daughter Mara. So it's kind of exciting when life changes and has that young family feeling, and work in the family farm. And my dad and parents are a mile and a half away, and my brother's at the home farm as well. So it's kind of fun when everybody's close knit.
Okay, absolutely. And are your grandparents still with us or no?
Yeah, mom's parents are still living, and they're still on their farm as well. So that's about 2 miles from my place.
Yeah, that's really, really unique. I don't think I've run into an American that can say that, much less you're my running mate.
Yeah, mom's parents are 80 or 81 years of age now. So okay. They're doing quite well.
So where did they homestead this land? Your great-grandparents?
Yeah, my great, or maybe it's great Vigs homesteaded at this location, and then great-grandpa Vig moved 1.5 miles west of here at Dad's location. And one of the great things that's still standing in that yard is one of the old cottonwood trees that's over 100 years old. And it shows its age, but it's still standing quite good.
That's really
and then, around 1910, there was a barn built on that farm as well. And around 1958 or 9, they lowered the barn 10 feet, and then they used a hayloft for machinery. So the structure is still there. And the Vig family apparently hired a barn contractor to come in and build barns. There was a property nearby that built a barn, and then another Vig property, cousins, north of Annetta. And so there's 3 barns relatively the same size or shape, and 2 of them are still standing today.
That's something. We're going to get some photos on that, and that'll be in all our commercials, because that's so. And they came directly from where then?
The Vigs came from a community in Norway called Vik, V-I-K. And then when they came across to Ellis Island, it's changed to VIG, Vig.
Okay, very good. And then they came directly to North Dakota, or did they go by way of Canada and stuff?
No, they came to North Dakota. And then, yes, so some relatives did, after growing up here, they did, I think 2 families who did go to Manitoba.
Okay.
So there's a connection up there as well.
Okay. So that is quite a family, an American story that is so rare, and very few people can say that, and especially in these tough times. You're a very young family. You're the millennial farmer. What do you think is the strength of your family to persevere for so long? I mean, farmers persevere, period, but your family has persevered for so long. Mm-hmm. What's the magic?
Well, for us, I think it's having family close by. We grew up, and my grandparents, the Vig grandparents, stayed on the farm in the second house there, and then my mom's parents were 1.5 miles away. So we were kind of close knit. It's if there's an adage that it takes a community to raise a child, it's very much kind of true here in North Dakota when we experienced that.
Yep.
And my great-grandparents was another example. Grandpa Vig married one of the neighbors, and that too was a close-knit family for that generation too. So it's kind of fun when keep that family connection strong.
Yeah.
And for farming as well, there's fun stories where we try and do things locally. Sharon used to have a dealership, an international dealership, and Sharon used to have a local grain elevator, and Dad and his dad patronized what they could locally, and we try and do the same now as well. When there's a wonderful co-op station in Annetta, or the grain elevator in Findlay is a co-op, we try and do our patronage locally.
Yeah,
that's another benefit.
Yeah, and it's a multiplier effect of prosperity when you do that, and that's helping quite a lot. So you grew up as, they always say farm boys or farm children, I should say, are just hard workers, and it's just so unique. So before you tell me what it's like as an adult farmer, what was it like growing up? Like, what was your typical day or summer or school like?
Grandpa Vig passed away when I was 18 years of age, but so growing up, the grandparents were always around. One of the fun things was, Grandma Vig and Grandma Mickelson and my mom made homemade bread. And then every once in a while in the summer, Mom would make homemade donuts. And so when Mom would make homemade donuts, seems like everybody tended to stop by and have a fresh donut and a cup of coffee. The garage was always full. So that's one of the fun things about growing up on the farm is all the neighbors were around at that time. And things have certainly changed in the last 10, 15 years for people retiring and maybe some less traffic. But in the 1990s, I thought things were fun and busy and lots of things were going on at that time.
Okay. And were you already starting to help with chores around? Like, when did you start learning to drive?
Oh, yes. Well, I think it was a 1486 International tractor. We hooked up to the rock picker and take it down the road and start picking rocks. And in the 1990s was the wet years as well. So there was new sloughs popping up along the way. So the tractor was always getting stuck with the rock picker, and we were trying ourselves to pull each other out, and that was a new experience as well.
Yeah.
And then we had a 4240 John Deere tractor with a swather. Dad let me make around, and then Grandpa came over to help on that project as well. So those were some of the fun memories of growing up in the 90s.
Yeah, that's great. So so the 90s were fun and more fruitful, but the 80s were super duper tough for farmers, right? All around, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so but your family has persevered the whole generations. But one thing is noted, especially in North Dakota, and I'm not sure if this is true of other states, but the farmers are involved in politics, and your family is deeply involved, but all farmers are in general. And can you kind of explain why that's so important for your livelihood and way of life?
Well, I think North Dakota has more elected officials per capita than any other state. And whether it's we elect our people to the county commission or the local township board or local city and city council, we have more elected officials. But then that civic engagement also transfers over to people being active on the local co-op board.
Right.
Great-Grandpa Vig was on the founding board of directors for the Cheyenne Valley Electric Board, and that was headquartered in Findlay. And after his 8 years, Grandpa Vig or Grandpa Joe got on the board as well for 20 years, Cheyenne Valley Electric. And we just found this paper the other day. Dad was working on some albums that was at Grandma's house, but 1952, Grandpa just got on the board of Cheyenne Valley, and then he got promoted to Minn-Kota Electric Board. So that was a fun article to come across.
Yeah.
Great-Grandpa Vig and Grandpa Joe were on the co-op boards, and then Dad was engaged with being in politics. He was in the 1983 session when the Democratic NPL had a majority in the House, and he stayed active with district politics over time. And I've had energy at the time, had the energy to pursue politics as well in 2006, and was successful at that time. So
Yeah.
it helps to be involved. I think civic engagement goes a long way, whether it's being involved locally here on the co-op board or being involved locally on the church board and township board. And
Right.
I think it pays dividends for people to be involved.
100%, and especially in North Dakota, in our more rural areas. But so you are only like what, 36 or something, right?
That's right.
But you have the depth of knowledge of some of our silver-haired friends in North Dakota. Did you guys talk about like, you have such a deep, like, you remember every policy and who did what for like 2 decades. Did you guys talk about it a lot over the supper table, or it was just after you became like a voting member of society that you started, like, or did you already just have that deep knowledge because that was just what you talked about?
Well, with the grandparents nearby, it's always fun if they were talking stories of what had happened on their experiences going to local conventions, or their experiences on the farm, and you can work with tools a better way every time. So to visit with and be around the grandparents was certainly beneficial. And same thing with my parents as well. To always hear stories of how they work with things. It pays off. And I try and listen when I can.
Well, yeah, you definitely, you're wise. So now you are an adult, fully fledged. I mean, I guess you're always a farmer, but now you are taking the reins of the farm, the family history, raising a young family. Your parents are starting to retire. So tell us, what is a typical day in your family's life? You know, like, it's just, tell us.
Yeah. Well, this year seems a little behind. We were out yesterday. I took some anhydrous tanks to town, and I think they had a flat tire on one anhydrous tank, and then got them home again. And we went cultivating last night some and scratched around the field. And yeah, the fields are still wet out there. So the typical day is, I don't know if there is any one typical day, but there's always a new challenge on every day. Farming is I would suppose driving a tractor might be photogenic, but it's more than just driving a tractor, because it's farming is we're visiting with the bank on a line of credit. Farming is we're visiting with crop insurance agent or our farm insurance agent. Farming is watching the markets, what's happening with the changing volatility in the markets every day, or keeping an eye on the weather. It seems like there's so much happening that we're always trying to keep the ball juggling here and keep everything afloat. So it's pretty fortunate in our area here at Sharon to have a good banker, a good insurance agent, and a good agronomist to help us out along the way.
Absolutely. It's those relationships for sure. It's always that. And I think that's something people don't really realize, because you're not even just trying to, you're planning for the day, the month, the year, and the next generation, right? Because I mean, it's a very systems approach. You have to like go out and go in and get your tractor out of the mud at the same time.
Yes. So one good example, the barn at Dad's place has lasted over 100 years now, and that's one example of planning for the next generation. In my yard, got an old machine shed here that they never tore down, but what they did was they raised it up and put it on cinder blocks, and now it's suitable for a small tractor. And all of a sudden, it's we can put 2 pickups in there and such, and it's look at these farmyards and the old buildings, and our previous generation was planning ahead, and it's up to us now to plan ahead for the next generation.
Right. And when you have picked up the torch of the family farm as your parents are retiring, was that something that you struggled with to decide to do, or was it just a natural part and there was a sharp divide when you're like, yep, this is what I'm going to do? Do you understand what I'm asking?
It seems like a natural occurrence when you want to do what your dad does or do what your mom does. It seems like a natural occurrence that yes, I want to do that. So,
Okay. All right. So, so you have a lovely wife, and she might pop in. She's out doing something right now, but hopefully she'll pop in. But tell us how you met your wife.
yeah, we went to a street dance in Petersburg. It was turned out to be an indoor street dance, and 32 Below was playing. And
But it wasn't 32 below outside.
no, this was end of June or middle June.
Okay.
We have a mutual friend in common that helped work with us to make sure we were together and start dating. And yes, it was when we were dating too, we tried to visit state parks, whether it's state parks in North Dakota or state parks in Minnesota. And kind of fun process. Yeah.
Okay. When you said a mutual friend was working to get us together, does that mean you and the mutual friend were working together to woo your wife, or your mutual friends like, oh, I like him, I like her, they should be together?
Yes. Yeah. That's right. So,
okay. That's a good friend.
yes.
Okay. And now you are also a father. So how is that? Has that changed your perspective? I mean, obviously you have a great relationship with your family, and like, has it changed though the sense of responsibility, or it's just like also very natural, like, yep, this is just like, you know?
Mhm. Well, it's fun to come home and to hear that chipper voice says, "Hi, Daddy." So
Oh.
that's one of the fun things. And when she surprises me on occasion, it's like I'm going to take 5 minutes and just follow around what she's up to. It's kind of a fun moment to experience.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So you also have a history with the Nonpartisan League, a pretty deep history. So can you tell us about that a little bit? And maybe any little history nuggets about the NPL that some people might not know?
Oh, well, I've certainly enjoyed reading the books over the years, whether it's Lloyd Omdahl's Insurgents or whether it's Agnes Geelan and her book with Dakota Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Sarah Vogel has a book on Frank Vogel. There's some good material out there on North Dakota politics, and it starts with the farmers coming together and finding ways that we can want better financing, having a bank in North Dakota, or we can find a better way to get our product to market with the state mill and elevator. We can always find a better way, and it also included with the NPL included workers' compensation and housing authority.
That's a good point, and that's something that we don't bring up a lot. But yeah,
those were NPL ideas.
Yeah, NPL. We
and
are always
still in effect today.
Farmers.
Yes.
Yep.
So
yeah.
So I've always been intrigued by what the NPL has done, and we might be sister organizations around the state that we don't like cooperatives, or if the NPL was faltering in politics, that we relied on our organizations, whether it be the cooperatives or the farmers union or some other organizations, to help with that grassroots effort and get voter turnout on the countryside. There's a fun movie, I think it's called Northern Lights, made in the 1970s. It's a kind of a dry movie, but if you get a chance to watch it, I enjoyed it. And
we'll have to do that.
It talks about organizing the NPL back in 1960.
All right.
And so if it was 2008, I thought there should have been somebody that has the North Dakota license plate NPL. There's, Sarah Vogel or Jim Fugly or Tracy Potter or some of the loyal members of the NPL I thought would have it, but no one did. So I applied for the NPL, and so I have that plate.
There you go. Dyed in the wool NPLer. So again, so you were a legislator, a well-respected legislator. You got along with everybody. Not because you were a yes man, but because you were you knew your stuff. And so who were your political mentors? Like, although your family has a huge influence, there has to be some sort of outside influence too. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Uh, well, we attended the political conventions, and I've always enjoyed the friendships that formed with Roger Johnson and Heidi Heitkamp, and then there's Kent, Byron, and Earl. I think the world of all those people. But for the legislature, there's Merle Boucher and Ole Arsvold, and there's a generation of legislators, and we went from the 1990s into the 2000s, and I was fortunate to serve with several of them there in '07 and '09. I sat next to Bill Ammerman, Pam Gullison, and Louise Pinkerton, and there's a wonderful group of folks there that I had opportunity to serve in the legislature with. And then the 2009 session, I sat with Clark Williams of Wahpeton and then Corey Mock of Grand Forks.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's like a brotherhood that forms, or it's really nice. It's really nice to watch you and watch you talk about them and them talk about you. Like, it's just like you're all great.
And yeah, to work with legislators too, and on the Republican side. Certainly admired the work that the chairmen have done. Dwayne Gray was on the Judiciary Committee, and Wes Belter was Finance Tax, and Dennis Johnson is Agriculture. And I just saw Dennis a couple of years ago at a restaurant in Devil's Lake. So kind of fun to reconnect with people over time. And think the world of some of those guys that treated me fair. It's wonderful experience.
Yeah, treating you fair. I mean, that sticks, right? And so I've noticed, and I don't know how much but I feel that the kids growing up here in North Dakota in school and then in voting and everything, there seems to be more civic engagement in general. Did you have more in school, or was it just coming more from the community discussions, or why is it that young people seem more civically aware about policies and politics, and actually think it's not just a game, but it's a way of life,
Well, we had our North Dakota history class. I think that was in junior high, and I thought the world of that class to experience what is North Dakota, and also in high school it was social studies class where the social studies or history teacher can translate that impact of, you get it to be civically engaged, you can have an impact, a positive impact on your community. I lost my train of thought here too now, but
that's okay. I mean, those are things that are important, and your history is so rich. And the thing, North Dakota, so when you learn North Dakota history, sometimes when you're talking about somebody's grandma that from, a few towns over. So it might sink in more a little bit, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess what I was also thinking of, I think of being at Sharon or going to Anetta's. These are home. This is home, but then I can also go to, whether it's New Rockford or Fessenden, or go up to Medora and stop in Bowman, and it seems like every community is home. And it's not if it's the landscape or the weather, but it's also the people that make that happen. You can have a conversation with anybody in any community, and it's like I was talking to my neighbor. And that's one of the great experiences about North Dakota.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So you talked about the landscape, and it's one thing that everybody talks about, no matter anybody that's in love with North Dakota, it always comes up like it's a fellow North Dakotan. Mm-hmm. And you're on the eastern side of the state, as opposed to me over here on the western side. So your landscape is very different. Is it the soil itself or the landscape itself? So I don't know if you can parse out what I'm trying to ask, but what is it when you talk about North Dakota land? What does that? Where's like your deepest like attachment?
Well, what I've enjoyed is reading about Native history, and part of it starts with that of the West with the Lakota, and then Mandan Hidatsa. But there's also a culture here in the East with the Chippewa and the Métis, and then it's kind of the land shapes where the those cultures were. But then it's also we think about might be Lake Agassiz that formed the river valley, and the Lake Agassiz will go from Wahpeton. It'll include the Devil's Lake Basin and then go north to Manitoba. And it's you can drive from one area to another into Minnesota, and it's just flat, and you can the wind. There's nothing stopping the wind really, so when it does blow, it really does cut into the skin, and you feel the cold air when it does come.
Yeah, the wind. Yeah.
So anyway, there's if that kind of
yes.
There's two concepts there that I was trying to relay on, but then it's
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I get it because you're here. Like it's mixed. The land shapes the people, and the people, are the land. So okay. So what is your, last question? What is your favorite thing about North Dakota?
Well, if I said it, kind of might have mentioned it earlier that it takes a community to raise a child, and I've felt that experience here, that the neighbors are like family, and then whether I'm here at Sharon or Annetta, or I can stop in communities around the state, I can stop in Pembina and start to visit, or I can go to New Rockford or Minot or wherever it may be, and have that fun conversation with anybody around the state. That it's the people that make the difference, and that's what I've enjoyed the last 36 years, and I certainly hope to make it enjoyable the next several decades as well. So.
Yeah, you will, and you'll be making history as North Dakota's next lieutenant governor. So Ben, it's been a pleasure, and I am so glad you're running with me, and also that you love North Dakota as much as I do. And
well, this has been fun. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Any last thoughts at all?
Well, keep up the good work. This is going to be a fun campaign, and we've got a good start on it. So yes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for all your knowledge and history, and we'll see you on the trail.
Yeah.
Okay.